Over the decades, many video game franchises have evolved and changed. The technology improves, our sensibilities grow, and thus we have new expectations. So when people go back and see the roots of how these things started, they often find a drastically different experience compared to today. And that's what this video is about. You're watching Humble Beginnings, a new series where I take a look back at the past to compare the present with how it all began. And today, I'd like to talk about Saints Row. This August, Volition released a new entry in the series simply titled Saints Row. And that's because this is a reboot of the franchise that looks to start over from scratch and wipe the slate clean. Why? Well, Saints Row kinda got fucking crazy. What started out as a franchise about gang warfare quickly evolved into something else. No longer wanting their game to be perceived as a Grand Theft Auto clone, Volition decided to break the restraints and start getting wacky with it. So all of a sudden, the Saints now found themselves diving out of airplanes, battling big muscle clone men, fighting off zombies, entering cyberspace, taking out terrorists in the Middle East, gaining control of the White House, fighting off extraterrestrial aliens, developing superpowers in the Matrix, and even flying around in the bowels of hell. Yes, the Saints actually conquer Satan. And that game had a musical number.
How do I burn out a city that's baptized in fire? How do I kill off an army that's dead? Time's slipping away now, and the best plan we've got is just put one inside Satan's head. If roles were reversed, God, I know they'd save me, but all my solutions involve murder sprees.
This series definitely went places. This change in direction actually split the fan base a bit because some people preferred the grounded approach of the first two games, while others the insanity of everything else. And let's face facts here, Saints Row III came out in 2011, so the series has been over the top for over a decade now. If you're only playing games on the Switch or PS4, you're not going to find the first two games. Being crazy is just the Saints Row brand now, with even the reboot still keeping that bombastic tone. Whether it was successful or not is not what this video's about. Because while I did play Saints Row all month, it wasn't the new one. It was the 2006 original. And it's not my first time playing it either. Back in the day, I chose to buy an Xbox 360 over the PS3. And this game was an exclusive that was heavily marketed.
You ready for this, player?
I saw commercials for this thing all the damn time. And being 2006, there weren't many games to choose from, so I gave it a chance. And you know what? I really liked it. I thought it was a fantastic game, and it led me to playing the rest of the series. But people don't often talk about this one. Like, people will gush about Saints Row 2 as the best one, people will gush about 3 and 4's audacity, but no one talks about the original. This may have something to do with the fact that even in 2022, the game is still an Xbox exclusive. It came out on the 360 and only the 360. No PC port, no re-release. The only reason someone's going to be playing it today is because it's backwards compatible on the Series X. And luckily the game does have a digital download, so you don't need to hunt for a physical copy. But regardless, while everyone's playing the reboot, I'm here to remind you how this all began. Let's take a look back at the 2006 original, Saints Row. So I guess an important thing to bring up is what kind of game Saints Row is. Well, as all the reviews so eloquently put it, it is a Grand Theft Auto clone. You're put into this big open world city, you can carjack any vehicle on the street, you're going to be shooting people with guns and rocket launchers, you're going to be buying weapons and ammos in shops. If you gain too much notoriety, you gotta go to a specific place to eliminate it. It plays exactly like the PlayStation 2 GTA games. San Andreas especially, which was all about gang warfare. Comparisons are unavoidable because Grand Theft Auto was so damn influential. I mean, nowadays, games are never called clones or rip-offs. It's a Souls-like, it's a Metroidvania, it pays homage. But the 2000s were a different time, and it's hard to deny that if you change the title to Grand Theft Auto, it wouldn't feel out of place. So yeah. This game takes place in a city called Stillwater where 3 violent gangs are constantly at war. Wearing yellow, you got the media mogul Vice Kings. In blue, the street racing West Side Rollers. And in red, the drug dealing Los Carnales. And these guys are tearing up the streets and ruining everyone's lives. Eventually, a man named Julius Little gets fed up and decides to do something about it.
Unless we wipe all these motherfuckers out, they're gonna keep coming. And they ain't gonna be happy. It ain't gonna be settled until the Carnales, the Rollers, and the Vice Kings ain't nothing but a memory.
To him, the only way to fight fire is with yet more fire. So he forms the 3rd Street Saints, a gang that really loves the color purple. Their base of operations, an abandoned church, one which resides in a part of the city now known as Saints Row. And that's where you come in. One day your character is just wandering the streets when another gang fight goes off.
Wrong time, wrong place, dawg.
You okay, player?
And so, because you were saved by Julius, you decide to join the 3rd Street Saints. I mean, who needs more motivation than that? See, in the Grand Theft Auto games, you always played as these established characters. Tommy Vercetti, Carl Johnson, people with backstories and motivations and whatnot. But in Saints Row, you create and customize your own character. They can be white, they can be black, they can be skinny, they can be fat. They could look like Paul Phoenix, they could be a beloved TV star.
Who the fuck's this guy?
Troy and I found him. We're gonna see if he'll ride with us.
Julius, if he wants to run with the Saints, he gotta be canonized.
You ready for this, player?
The only thing they can't be is a woman. Seriously, in the first Saints Row, you could only be a male character.
Look around, hun. I think you'll notice a distinct lack of pussy.
In the game itself, you stumble across tons of buddies wearing your colors, and you can recruit them to join you on missions so you don't have to handle it alone. But some of the Saints are women. There's tons of ladies in the gang, so I don't know why they never thought to give you the option to be one of those ladies. I mean, I can guess that Saints Row was made as a power fantasy for the male demographic. I don't think it's any coincidence that the leader of the West Side Rollers just so happens to look exactly like Dominic Toretto. There's strippers everywhere and boys being boys. It's certainly a product of its time. They'd add female options from Saints Row 2 onwards, but I don't think the trailer advertising this aged very well.
First up is Randy the Tranny. Look out, world! Not even his CEO would recognize us!
Oh, Jesus. It was a different time! It was a different time. Your character never really rises to the top until the end of the game. They're just a follower doing missions for everyone else, so they always keep their mouth shut. Literally. They never say a goddamn word.
And she goes on, dinner this, flowers that. Fucking bullshit, right? Yeah, thanks for your advice, man. You're a big help.
What makes this funny is that the character is the same one in all 4 games. Later, they have to justify why you were so silent back then, or they have to handwave you being a lady now.
Hey, you look different. You do something with your hair?
You look great. Did you do something with your hair?
Yeah, I've been getting that a lot.
You look different, did you?
I didn't do shit to my hair.
The customization is okay, but compared to what future games offer, it's nowhere near as deep. The clothing you buy in shops is just a lot of regular stuff that you'd see on regular people. No hot dog outfit, no green skin, no leather daddy gimp suit. You really gotta be creative to make something wacky out of all these options. Although one thing I like about Saints Row is that you're actually encouraged to wear purple and represent the gang. See, your clothing will actually dictate how much respect you earn when you do activities. If you're wearing a fancy suit, if you got lots of bling and tattoos, you're gonna rise through the ranks quicker than if you stuck to your initial jeans and t-shirt. But buying a suit alone won't max out your XP gains, you gotta make it purple. These variants have higher modifiers than the other colors, which helps you roleplay for the part, you know? As you can see, my gangbanger is a classy mofo, if I do say so myself. So let's talk about what respect does. Like a Grand Theft Auto, there are missions to complete which not only advance the story, they also help you unlock territories and special bonuses. New cars, new weapons, new hangouts to save your game at. But unlike GTA, you can't just play any mission you want right off the bat. You need to earn respect points before Julius will let you participate. You gotta prove yourself, you gotta show these guys that you can get shit done. So you partake in many of the various activities scattered throughout Stillwater. Sometimes you need to go on a rampage. Sometimes you need to protect drug dealers. And sometimes you just need to run into traffic.
You throw yourself in harm's way, I write a totally accurate insurance claim, and we all walk away a hell of a lot richer.
Insurance fraud is an activity in which your character goes into ragdoll mode, and the objective is to get so badly hurt that you earn tons of money. This is by far the game's standout activity, one which helped catapult the series into being more wacky. In fact, in the sequels, they start implementing this adrenaline mode, which allows your character to bounce so freaking high after getting hit that you purposefully aim for other cars to try and achieve a giant combo. I love me some ragdoll physics. There's one activity where you drive this limo and you have to protect an escort and her clients from the paparazzi. This is a minigame that teenagers should not play with their family in the room because it's just constant sex noises and innuendo.
You sure you can walk home, baby?
You, missed a spot on your chin.
One of my favorite things to do with this activity was hit a jump and land on one of the airport hangars where the photographers sure as hell couldn't follow me. There are 8 levels per activity, which is more than enough to finish the game. They go by pretty quick, and you can always focus on the minigames that you enjoy the most. I do 8 rounds of Demolition Derby, and I can play 8 story missions directly after. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. You're going to be stealing cars, racing cars, assassinating people, taking out pimps who've stolen your hose. It's a big part of the game, and I guess some people might be bothered that you have to do it at all. But you know, I think being a sandbox game, it's nice that the game gives you a reason to actually do side activities. Plus, beating level 8 on these activities gets you awesome rewards, like unlimited sprinting, new cars, golden handguns, and even a pimp shotgun. It's a gun that you walk around with like a cane that is also a shotgun that deals unbelievable damage. That's awesome! These side games get much better in Saints Row 2 onwards, but they're still pretty good in the original as well. So what do you do in these story missions? Well, it's a lot of shooting, a lot of driving. There's a few sniper missions, there's a mission where you have to hold off enemy waves, missions where you gotta storm a stronghold and kill everybody in there. It's nothing mind-blowing, but it's still satisfying regardless. I mean, one thing you gotta give Saints Row credit towards is the actual gunplay. Again, keep in mind that the year is 2006 and open world games are still learning the ropes. I know we all love the Grand Theft Auto games, but they sure as hell weren't perfect. If you got those games on consoles, you couldn't manually aim, so you had to blindly fire, or you had to lock on with R1. But doing this for every single enemy jerked the camera all over the place and left your character stationary, unable to dodge bullets. There's a reason the sniper rifle and machine guns were hella useful. Games like True Crime Streets of LA just auto-aimed for you so you could blast people with reckless abandon. There were always improvements along the way, but it never started feeling right until the 7th generation, which Saints Row is a part of. Because this game wisely gave the player an aiming reticle which was used for every single weapon. I could shoot people while strafing to the side, I could shoot them from far away with a handgun. Hell, I could shoot them while in a car myself, and I wasn't restricted to the left or right of me. I could shoot from the front, taking out gangsters with headshots while they drive too. This control makes you feel so damn powerful. You never feel like you're fighting with the camera, you never feel like the movement speed is too much. It's all snappy and responsive, even in 2022. And considering this is the first game in the series, that's pretty great. This title's all about gang warfare, and I think that aspect is integrated into the gameplay much better than San Andreas. Like yeah, in that game you were also taking over territories for Grove Street, but it felt like CJ was always on his own. Whereas with Saints Row, you can push up on the D-pad to whistle to another of the Saints walking the streets, and they will actually follow you around. They're locked, they're loaded, they will attack anyone who gives you grief. Eventually, as you accumulate more respect and complete more missions, you'll bump up the recruits from 1 to 2 to 3. And then you can have an entire car full of henchmen joining you on any mission that you want. It feels good to enter something like an abandoned police station and be confident knowing that if your health starts getting low, you can always hide behind your bros, and more often than not, they'll kick some ass. Even if they don't, your homies never really die. When they lose their health, a 30-second timer starts going above their head, at which point you can run up and revive them. You can save them as many times as you want, so even if you're causing a rampage in town, the cops can't truly eliminate your group. You'll just pick them up, and they'll keep drawing the fire. I just really like some of the larger scale battles, like when you transport a truck filled with Saints over to an enemy meth lab. The doors open and all of a sudden you got like 8 or 9 dudes walking alongside you, killing everything that moves. The only thing the first game is lacking in this department is a co-op mode for the story, something that Saints Row 2 onwards always had. Another thing I'd like to compliment is the actual color and art design. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Saints Row is one of the best looking games of the 7th generation, but it does pop off screen. The colors are vibrant, it's easy to see everything at night, the characters have really good design and models. When we get to Saints Row 2, I always thought it was a bit of a step down because everything is so brown and gray. The colors were muted, and characters like Julius don't have nearly as much presence as they used to. And with 3 and 4, while those games featured more color, they really dimmed the surroundings with heavy shadows and whatnot. It always felt just a little off, nowhere near as vibrant as, say, Grand Theft Auto 5. I really like how the first game looks by comparison. Another thing I think it does best? The soundtrack. Being a GTA clone, of course when you're driving around you can listen to the radio. And Saints Row features 12 different radio stations with their own dedicated genre. Alternative rock, pop music, hip-hop, reggae, classical, even easy listening. They have an entire station dedicated to the kind of muzak you'd hear in elevators or TV commercials. Now, I can't play any of the music because of YouTube's copyright system, but just take a look at the list on screen and you'll get a good idea why I enjoy the soundtrack so much. Especially Danko Jones' Home to Hell, which might be one of the best, most over-the-top angry hate songs I've ever heard. Having replayed the sequels, I genuinely believe that Saints Row 1 has the best soundtrack of all the games. Although the other titles use their music to much greater effect. I think everyone remembers that moment in Saints Row 3 where you dove out of the helicopter to Kanye West. Still, credit where credit's due, in the first game you can customize your own playlist and even listen to it outside of the car. Something that definitely wasn't possible in the PS2 Grand Theft Autos. A lot of great stuff started with the first game, and I don't think it's a terrible beginning at all. It's just, you know, the sequels are much better. First off, the gunplay is good, but there are some dated design elements. If you're looking for a duck and cover shooter with regenerating health, this isn't really the game for you. I mean, there is regen, but it takes like 30 seconds to kick in. You have to go out of your way to hide from enemies for a long period of time before your HP starts coming back. There are no health kits or med packs to collect. Instead, the game wants you to regularly visit a fast food restaurant known as Freckle Bitches. Yes, it's called Freckle Bitches. Stillwater is a very classy place. But here is where you buy chicken nuggets, fries, and chicken burgers, which are not to be confused with the incorrectly titled chicken sandwiches. Basically, you open your weapon wheel and then chow down on that food you picked up to instantly get your health back. You'd figure that the challenge would be remembering to buy fast food every now and then, but actually all of the enemies you kill are carrying food themselves, so more often than not you're grabbing burgers during a shootout. Which is pretty funny. It's a shame I can't wear a black and white prison suit because it would really help me roleplay as the Hamburglar. Honestly, every time I died in a shootout, it wasn't because I had no food on me, it's because I couldn't even tell that I was dying. Seriously, most modern video games have some kind of indicator that you're in danger. A red blood filter, muted sound effects, anything that could clue you in and be like, oh, I'm about to die. But not Saints Row 1. It's hard to pay attention to that red line in the top right corner of the screen, and that's when you learn the real harsh lesson of the game, that life doesn't have checkpoints. Now, to be fair, it is doing more than the Grand Theft Auto games, because at least when you die in a mission, it gives you a prompt to restart that mission right away. In GTA, you always had to drive back to the mission marker and rebuy all of your weapons and ammo, which got tedious after a while. Here, you're allowed to jump back in and redo all of the 3-minute long drives that so many of the missions start with. I think the most infamous part of the game is the final Carnales mission, What Goes Up.
We don't got time. One of Troy's crew saw Angelo driving to the airport. We gotta stop his ass before he can skip town and rebuild.
This mission begins with a 2-minute drive to the airport from Saints Row. In it, you are riding shotgun while your buddy Dex drives all over the place, doing circles, hitting jumps, everything but reaching the goddamn plane you're trying to destroy. And the Carnalas are just loaded with insta-kill rocket launchers. If I don't take out the rocket guys before they fire on me, yeah. Because this game has no checkpoints, I have to keep driving back to the airport again and again and again and again. And there were lots of missions like that for me, where I did so much to get where I did, but then I make one mistake, and now I have to redo 5 or 6 minutes of gameplay. Rockets and explosions are always the big culprit. How was I supposed to know that the crew were all loaded with rocket launchers? Where the fuck does a gang like this get 30 rocket launchers? Ironically, I had trouble in the opposite direction because there was this one stronghold mission where I had to fire rockets at passing Vice Kings. They give you 13 rockets and you have to hit 5 of their cars. But the problem is that they're moving really fast and these rockets don't home in on them. You're expected to fire on them from afar and just guess the distance and trajectory perfectly in order to hit them. Other than the sniper rifle, none of these weapons have a zoom feature at all. 13 rockets, as it turns out, is not enough when you're constantly missing your shots. Ugh. Some of the missions are definitely dated, and some players won't want to go through the hassle. But you could say the same thing about the old Grand Theft Auto games too. Let's be fair though, as much as I've been praising Saints Row in comparison to those games, I still have to acknowledge they are much bigger and far more ambitious. In 2002's Vice City, they let you drive motorcycles, sailboats, and helicopters. Not one of those things is in the original Saints Row. Think of how big San Andreas is, how you're actually playing around with 3 different cities, how you can parachute from a jet or shoot people while wearing a jetpack. Obviously, Grand Theft Auto made a bigger impact because it was shooting for the stars. It wouldn't be until Saints Row 2 that they'd add the vehicles that Vice City had 6 years after the fact. The first game is much simpler, and yet it still has its fair share of technical issues. I had to turn the VSync on as soon as I could because the screen tearing is really bad. But in doing so, a lot of the cutscenes will sometimes run at like 10 frames a second. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Things don't always load correctly. I had the highway disappear on me a few times. In one mission, I had to destroy all of these cars and one of them just didn't spawn in. Like, the blip was on the radar, it's supposed to be right in front of me, but it just wasn't there. I reload the mission and sure enough, there it is. But the biggest thing to worry about is your save file. Saints Row does not have an autosave function. And it'd be one thing if that's all I had to worry about, but unfortunately, this game likes to crash. On 3 separate occasions, the game locked up on me, and since it doesn't automatically record your progress, that meant I had to replay dozens of missions all over again. This wasn't an emulation issue. I'm playing this on the Xbox 360 with an up-to-date patch. The game lacks difficulty options, your AI teammates can be pretty dumb and get stuck on things. Saints Row is most definitely an open-world game from 2006. But you know, despite all of these criticisms, I still like it. I still had a lot of fun replaying this thing. Because while it may not be the most amazing game ever, you can tell that the people who made this understood Grand Theft Auto's shortcomings. Like if your car ends up falling into the water, 1, you can't drown, thank God, and 2, instead of forcing you to find an incline to get back on shore, you are given a prompt to instantly warp back. That saves the player so much time. Like GTA, you can store cars in your hideout's garages, but unlike those games, you can store more than 2 or 3 of them. I mean, if they're going to put the time and effort into making auto shops that can customize your cars, let you change the color, give them decals, etc., then I don't want to lose that vehicle too easily. You go back to your garage, and any of your favorite cars that were destroyed can be instantly repaired as long as you pay the fee. If there was a mission you really liked, you don't have to replay the whole game just to try it again. Because in Stillwater are a whole bunch of movie theaters, and it's here you not only rewatch the story cutscenes, but can also replay missions. I appreciate the ease at which things are possible. Saints Row is always referred to as a GTA clone, but there's so much heart and soul in the game design that it feels dismissive to write it off as such. In fact, here comes a hot take. I was really disappointed by Grand Theft Auto 4. It felt like a big step down from San Andreas, and the car physics were weird, and no, Roman, I don't want to go bowling. The whole time when I was playing that game, I just kept thinking to myself, I'd rather be playing Saints Row. Which should tell you how highly I think this first entry actually is. It's a fun game. A dated one, but still very fun. I guess the last thing I'll talk about is the story. And this game's cutscenes are so 2000s, it hurts. I mean, first off, we gotta talk about the all-star cast. This game came out in an era where game development was much cheaper, so publishers would blow all their money getting big-name talent. Academy Award nominee Michael Clark Duncan is Benjamin King.
I said, you know how I did that?
Mr. King?
I did it by knowing when it was time to build, when it was time to watch, and when it was time to act.
Tia Carrere from Wayne's World, David Carradine from Kill Bill.
So your plan is to go steal cars. You really know how to think outside the box, Donnie.
Listen up, you old
Lynn, don't worry about it.
Shut up, Donnie.
You were saying...
I was about to tell you to go fuck yourself.
Clancy Brown, Michael Rappaport, who must have been feeling deja vu having been in Grand Theft Auto 3.
This is Pops Capo, Tony Cipriani.
Hey, I'm Tony Cipriani.
What the fuck?
Freddie Rodriguez of 6 Feet Under fame. You probably recognized Keith David as Julius. Even Mila Kunis is in this.
That's cute, sweetie. That's just precious.
Tanya is a big hoe. This is great. I kill people, I die. This is fabulous. You know, what else can you ask for?
But there's one casting choice I didn't even realize until this month. See, there's a character named Legal Lee. He's a sleazy lawyer who you visit for the insurance fraud activity. Has lots of billboards, shows up again in Saints Row 2. He's a thing. But I'm listening to one of his commercials on the radio, and all of a sudden, the actor's identity hits me like a brick.
I'm Legal Lee of Legalese. You've heard the phrase, if you've got a phone, you've got a lawyer, right? Well, now you don't even need a phone. You just need a wallet, a bus schedule, and a cause for justice.
Do you recognize that voice? Legal Lee is played by Phil Morris, the guy who played Jackie Chiles in Seinfeld.
This is a clear violation of your rights as a consumer. It's an infringement on your constitutional rights. It's outrageous, egregious, preposterous.
See, nowadays with a game like Saints Row 2022, of course they're gonna hire voice actors. But the 2000s were a different time, and celebrities were roped into these games again and again and again. It's kind of funny in retrospect that the first game might have the most star power. The world of Saints Row definitely has an edge to it. You can tell from the very first activity where a pimp offers you one of his prostitutes and the lady is morbidly obese. In one activity, a guy tells you to get lost, only not really, because he was actually talking to a girl that was under the table giving the dude a blowjob.
I don't give a fuck about the drugs. I don't give a fuck about Oruela.
What about Manuel?
This game wants to push the envelope so hard, and I think you've noticed, it has a bit of a potty mouth. There isn't a cutscene in this game where they don't say the F word at least 2 or 3 times.
Fuck you, Johnny.
Fuck me? Fuck you!
Watch your fucking mouth.
What is this, fucking 3rd grade?
I'm gonna skull fuck that bitch.
Hope you don't mind hepatitis.
What?
Oh, I'm sorry, the main character does talk. They actually have 4 lines in the game, each one occurring at the end of a quest line.
You okay, player?
I got ran over by a motherfucking truck. What do you think?
Oh, quit being a bitch.
You know, in the endless debate of which Saints Row games were better, sometimes people like to pretend that Saints Row 1 and 2 weren't comedic. And I mean, come on. This game's tongue is firmly in cheek. You don't call a restaurant freckle bitches if you're trying to be super serious. Saints Row is a power fantasy about establishing a criminal empire. It's you and the boys doing crazy shit with a very cavalier attitude. A game like San Andreas has way more to say about gang violence. How it tears families apart, how drugs ruin people's lives, the corruption of law enforcement. Saints Row is not nearly as deep. Not that it matters, because, you know, some games are just fun popcorn entertainment. If it makes me smile, if it makes me laugh, then who cares, you know? The characters are so larger than life that I'm just enjoying being along for the ride.
I didn't think the rollers pimped hoes.
Any other comments?
Yeah, when you punch, don't throw your shoulders so much.
Shut up, Johnny.
You know, when people think of their favorite Saints Row characters, they're usually thinking of people from the sequels. Kinsey Kensington, Matt Miller, Pierce, Shaundi, both of them. But none of them are in the first game. The only standout character who managed to last up until the very end was Johnny Gat.
You don't look like much. Then again, I don't look like I have an 8-inch cock, so I guess we're both full of surprises.
He is by far the best character in the game, purely because he's a psychopath who isn't afraid of anything. Johnny Gat takes glee in causing mayhem and even has to take his time picking out weapons that suit the occasion. He doesn't care who he mouths off to, and he's always willing to be part of the action. He's a huge fan favorite. In fact, one of the criticisms of Saints Row 3 was that they killed him off in the first mission of the game. The outrage was so high that Volition had to bring him back for Saints Row 4 and even gave him his own game with Gat Out of Hell. The character was even playable in the Saints Row spin-off, Agents of Mayhem. When people think of Saints Row, they think of Johnny Gat.
My favorite part of murdering is the murdering part.
But what about the other Saints? They're alright. I think Dex is pretty chill, and I like how he gets annoyed when people say the Los Carnales, which is bad grammar. Troy is barely in the game. He shows up for 4 or 5 missions, but we never really directly work for the guy. He's just a background character who occasionally pops up. There are hints as to why he's not actively helping all the time, but we'll get to that later. Lynn is the only female lieutenant of the group who's gone undercover with the West Side Rollers. Much closer to Johnny Gat in terms of attitude, she is annoyed by every dumb fuck idiot who comes her way. She's actually a fun character, but the problem is, she gets killed. Yeah, main characters can die in Saints Row, and unfortunately, she gets found out and takes a bullet. Although funny enough, after the mission, you can recruit Zombie Lynn as a homie. Like, she literally shows up saying brains with her flesh rotting off and everything. So no, Saints Row 3 was not the first game to have zombies. It was the very grounded Saints Row 1. Julius is a cool leader. I mean, the guy's voiced by Keith David, for Christ's sake. I like his take-no-shit attitude, and it's fun that he's actually best friends with the leader of the Vice Kings. But he has the same problem with Troy, where you keep spending all this time with the lieutenants, and Julius is just off-screen doing his own thing. It's not so much that the characters are bad, they just aren't given enough to do. And that all comes down to the lackluster ending of this game. Again, the whole point of the plot is the Saints destroying the other gangs, which is fun. I like that each of the gang's characters have their own interests and motivations. You get to see them freak out about their failures, how they keep falling apart the more you take them on. And then there are the interesting twists where one character might betray their leader to gain more power, or another will change sides purely because of how one guy treats his girlfriend. You understand what each character wants, whether they're emotional or calm and collected. You sympathize with some of them despite being on opposite sides. I genuinely like the character dynamics, and so I did enjoy the individual stories. But then you win. You eliminate the other gangs, you conquer every territory, the map of Stillwater is just completely purple now. And that's it. The credits start rolling, and it's like, oh, I guess the game's over. That is until you discover that there are 2 extra epilogue missions. It turns out Julius has been arrested, and now as the interim leader of the Saints, you're being blackmailed into doing work for a politician named Alderman Hughes. Eventually you meet this guy on a yacht where Julius is watching from afar, and Troy's holding a police badge. He's an undercover cop? Oh boy.
Yo, can you speed this shit up? I want to go to Freckle Bitches.
You're going to die here, son. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a party to...
Holy shit! The boat explodes and your character supposedly dies. And then the credits start rolling again. What? You can't end here. The story was just getting good. God, imagine if Saints Row never had a sequel and this was the ultimate ending of the story. What a letdown. There's no completeness. There's no payoff to any of the arcs. It ends with a bang and yet feels like a whimper. It's a very weird note to end a game on, but that, ladies and gentlemen, is Saints Row. One thing that's worth pointing out about Saints Row is that it came out in August of 2006, just a few months before the PlayStation 3 and Nintendo Wii. Yes, this is older than this. It's a 6th gen game in a 7th gen world. The dialogue is edgy, the bugs are plentiful, but goddamn is it fun at the end of the day. Learning from Grand Theft Auto's past, they implemented so many quality of life improvements that only benefited the genre. This series would make a lot of strides in 8 years, and it's no doubt because of fan feedback. Saints Row walked, so Saints Row 2 could run. Clearly the sequels are better, but this isn't a bad start at all. Fun cutscenes, fun gameplay, great soundtrack. If you don't mind playing what's essentially a PS2 game on an HD console, I definitely recommend the original Saints Row. Seriously though, I love the Saints Row franchise. You should definitely play Saints Row 2, Saints Row 3, Saints Row 4. I don't know about the reboot yet. I still haven't played it. I'm waiting to get a PlayStation 5, but I'll get around to it eventually. No opinions on the reboot. I don't have any. Yeah, I love me some Saints Row, and now you know this series' humble beginnings.
So what's in here? Guns? Money? Some uncut shit? Shoes?
Actually, they're this season's new.
Bullshit, that's last year's fall collection.
That's not true.
Just let it go, man.